What is going on, everyone, and welcome to the brand new series. Something brand new, completely new on the channel before, where we're going to be doing fighter showcases and simply just showcasing a fighter that has an upcoming fight, whether it be on the UK regional scene, PFL, Bellator, UFC, Cage Warriors, any promotion, any fighter. If they pique my interest, I'm going to come on a camera, talk a bit of shit, and just start explaining who they are. But today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at Wez Tully. Now, a 6-2 amateur fighter, it's pretty clear his striking base seems to be Muay Thai, and his grappling as well has come along a long way. His next fight is going to be on UKFC 33, where he takes on Chris Morris for the lightweight title, which will be Chris Morris's first title defense as well, since moving down completely to 155 and winning that belt against Matty Mazur in his last bout as well. But this video is not about him, it's all about Wez Tully. And moving into the first section, of which we're going to be talking about who is Wez Tully. So as mentioned, Wez Tully is a 6-2 amateur fighter. His first bout was in 2018 on Budo FC 27, as I have in front of me. Who would have thought? I have notes these days, but he was able to go on a 4-fight win streak, where his final fight in that 4-fight win streak was against Will Jones, in which he was able to win that by an armbar in round 3. Which is something that we've seen happen in his fights before, but on the receiving end of it, unfortunately, in his second fight that he had with Alex Gill, which was his second to last fight that he had, which was around the start of 2022. So we're past a year now since that fight. And then since then, he went on and beat Venet Banushi, who took on Ryan Lockett, and both of them was able to beat him. Obviously, it seemed to make sense to have those two matched up against each other, and it was Wez Tully who was able to get the win there. Now, this is a fight that you'll have seen train quite a lot with the likes of Nathan Epps, who's one of his main coaches, and as well some of the people he's trained with. We've seen him with Fabian Edwards before, Tim Moore when he went out into Thailand, and many other athletes as well. But he trains around in that Midlands area, mostly with Nathan Epps, and the work that they've been able to do has been nothing short of sort of monumental in terms of the progression that he's made since last year, taking a look at his last bout. And even comparing, you know, from his fight in September of 2022 to March in 2022, he looks a completely different fighter. And I think the thing that stands out with Wez Tully is in each fight he brings something different. He does something different that caters towards the sort of opponent that he's facing. And it's something that we've seen fighters who have worked with Nathan Epps before do quite a lot of the time. I mean, one fight that sticks out to me that'll be similar to this, only at an amateur level, is Sal Rogers versus Timwell, where he was able to go and get that win and showed some great anti-grappling. He was reversing the positions. The first round, Sal Rogers was able to get him down, but he makes those adjustments in the second and the third round and is able to get the decision win as a result of the work that he'd put in. And even Nathan Epps himself posted on his social medias that you can find, I'm sure, I believe, NATH_Epps. There you go, Nath_Epps, basically, where you're able to go and sort of see the work that he's put in there, and the things that they was drilling, the different scenarios that could take place in the fight, that did take place in the fight as well. And I think when you are taking on someone like Chris Morris, who, you know, he does like to grapple, he's shown that in his last fight as well when he took on Dennis Frimpong, that even if he doesn't necessarily have a striking advantage, or not the reach advantage as well, he's able to sort of get inside and still start. Audio cuts out. Anyway, we're going to return back to winning ways. So we're talking about the grappling exchanges that could take place in this fight. But for me, I think what does make it sort of very interesting is how this stylistically could potentially play out. And that is what we're going to get into next. How do I see this fight playing out? And what do I sort of see happening within this fight? Well, let me tell you. So I believe if it does go to the ground, obviously training at 10th Planet Redditch MMA, 10th Planet Redditch MMA, some of the things that you can expect to sort of see from Wez himself is he's going to be able to handle himself on the ground very comfortably. He's got some great submission. He's got some great submission wins under his belt. He's got great chokes. His armbar is extremely dangerous. You know, even before his loss with Alex Gill in the second fight, he almost got an armbar there as well. But the thing that makes it most exciting for me is, let's say this fight starts out on the feet, and that is how the fight sort of plays out throughout the entire first round. You know, he's on the feet a little bit. Chris threatens to shoot here and there, and he keeps Wez Tully on the back foot a little bit. I think it's going to be the adjustments that will make that big sort of difference in the second round that is going to really change the table for this game, for this fight. And I think that's what's going to make it incredibly interesting. we've seen this before where it gets to the second round where he was on the back foot before because someone was threatening with takedowns, where he'll just go and throw in his own takedown of his own and really put his opponent on the back foot, which is what Wez likes to do. If he smells blood and he's straight on them, he knows how to corner a fighter. He can cut off the cage in many different ways if he does get someone hurt, and that is why you'll see him oftentimes sort of be on the front foot as well. And I think in a fight where he does normally fight orthodox, I'd like to maybe potentially see a few stance switches in there as well. Really throw off Chris Morris when it does come to making those shots, because he can't ever really make too long enough a time to get a read on him. What's he going to do? What's he going to throw? I could see Tully trying to keep him on the end of his jab straight. You could maybe even see him using the teep as well, which I think has been a big weapon for him recently. You go back and look at his Muay Thai fight that he recently had last year, I believe it was. You could see there how that was working for him. And his calmness as well. Even if he does get put on the back foot, I think he'll still be very calm. But I know ideally he'd want to be on that front foot more than being on the back foot, which does make it a very interesting fight in that sense. If Chris Morris does get him on the back foot, what do I see happening? I just see all hell breaking out. I see it just becoming an absolute fast-paced fight for each fighter, so fighting for the control to dictate the pace of the fight, and each fighter will be looking to push it quite high also. But in this fight, what makes it interesting is we've got a chance to maybe see 5 rounds out of Wez Tully again. The last time we saw this, he didn't get the win on the decision, but I think now as well, even more than ever, obviously, he probably lost the first round that we saw when he took on Alex Gill, but it was, and maybe was a bit too slow in that opening round. But in the second, obviously, he picked it back up and he looked better until he made that mistake where he was eventually caught in an armbar of Alex Gill's own. I think with 5 rounds here, you can see Tully really upping the pace and trying to get those early round wins, winning those, banking them, and forcing Chris to sort of do different things, maybe shoot more on him and sort of try and force Chris into maybe gassing out a little bit from making too many entries. But as well with that, obviously the weight distribution of Chris on his takedowns is very good, and he's able to get people down. But if he's always having to make the entries, he's going to get tired. But as well, Tully's a very strong fighter, and for me, Chris Morris, he seems as though he could go even less than lightweight. He doesn't look incredibly drained when he does cut to maybe 155 for a fight. I feel as though this is someone that could go to featherweight even. In terms of how his strength translates into the lightweight division, it does work well, but Tully for me is one of the strongest lightweights I've sort of seen in terms of his base. You get him in the clinch, he looks strong there. He's on the ground, he looks strong there. He's able to sweep, he's able to transition if he's on the bottom to try and get back to a top position, and that is what sort of makes him an incredibly interesting fighter in that sense. But let's say this fight does go to the ground, it's there, and Tully is on the bottom. What do I see sort of playing out a little bit? Well, when we saw Chris Morris versus Dennis Frimpong, obviously, Dennis is able to threaten off his back very well. He's got a lot of submissions. I believe he's a blue belt, but should in reality be a purple belt. I've seen grappling footage that people haven't seen before of him, and he does very well there. And during whole lockdown, all he did was work in the gi with obviously Shamrock, who now, if you don't know, gets, and everyone knows him at this point. But he did a lot of work there while he was still in Ireland, came over to England, and one of his main weaknesses that we saw wasn't necessarily his jiu-jitsu, it was his wrestling. And I feel as though that could potentially make it different. But when they were on the ground, Chris Morris didn't really transition too much. He sat inside of Dennis's guard and just sort of stayed there. He was comfortable to stay and get that control time. But there didn't seem to be any sense of urgency. He didn't posture too much on him. He weren't really throwing anything. He weren't trying to get out of his guard. He sat there and controlled him, because the threatening nature that is with Dennis Frimpong being in the bottom position is he's got so many chokes he can get you in. He knows how to reverse fighters quite well, and you don't want to really give him the chance to get up because he was having advantages there. For the time that he was able to keep him on the end of his range, he was seeing a lot of success within that fight. But I think the thing with Tully is, again, he's another fighter that can threaten with submissions. We already spoke about some of the ones that he does have. And that, for me, again, could we see a repeat from Chris Morris where there's not as much urgency on the ground? He's happy to sort of rack up that control time. And with there being 3-minute rounds, if Chris Morris is on top all the time, and it's obviously his home show, you never know what can happen. The rounds may just get scored in his favour because Tully hasn't been able to really do anything. And if he gets him down early, that is even more of sort of a problem that can come with that in that sense. But I think Tully is someone, you're not going to keep him on the ground. And if you do, he's always going to be active. He's always going to be doing something. So that is what makes it incredibly dangerous for that fight, the ground. Now, if the fight does sort of stay on the feet, again, it adds in another element to what will make it incredibly interesting to see. And I think for me, seeing Tully work in both stances this time would be really interesting. Sort of make it difficult for Chris Morris to get the chance to make those entries using the straight shots. You know, we saw the teep and how he used that in his Muay Thai fight, and we've seen how he's used the straight shots that he's had even in his boxing fights in the past that you could go a couple of years back with, where I still believe he is undefeated in the sport of boxing. So you never know, the next Muhammad Ali right there. But in terms of looking at those striking exchanges and what can come of them, I think Tully does have the advantage. I feel as though he's got more tools on the feet. He'll prep for different scenarios as well that can play out on the feet and on the ground. And something that makes me think that's going to be the case is go and watch Sal Rogers versus Tim Wilde and tell me you don't see things that was drilled with Nathan Epps and Tim Wilde that he didn't use in the fight. And it almost seems like that sort of fight, but at an amateur level, Tim Wilde versus Sal Rogers almost seems like Wez Tully versus Chris Morris to me. And I think there we'll be able to see sort of similar situation. He always brings something different. No matter what opponent it is, he's doing something differently to cater towards what that opponent's doing and what makes it different. But the final thing that we are going to head into is what next with a win here? Who could he face? Could he go pro even? But what could he do with a UKFC title wrapped around his waist? Well, for me, I think if he wins here, you do have to start thinking about pro. It'll be his 9th amateur fight. He could still go on and have more. He could take time out and go to Thailand again and train there. But I think you take a look at this division at the moment and really look at the top 10. Obviously, Chris Morris is in there at number 9. If he loses, depending how, it wouldn't make sense for a rematch. Tiernan Lutheran, obviously, he's now at Fight Academy Ireland. I can't see him coming and fighting back over in England this year. I can see him just staying there and fighting on the Irish shows. But he is 1-2 in terms of his last 3 fights. Obviously, one of them being a draw, so 0-1-2. But taking all of that, it wouldn't really make sense for him to come in and have the fight. Mario Di Stefano isn't going to fight in England, I don't think, and he's lost his last 2. Dom Narcus, he's gone pro. Jordan Fury, I believe, he's another fight I can see just going pro now. He beat Charlie Hatton. Teddy Stringer, gone pro in America, San Diego, unless you're going to go there on a regional show and fight my amateur somehow. You never know. There's Benoit. I'm not sure if he's gone pro. He could. You never know. He's 9-0, but I do think he could do with maybe getting another win, and that fight would be something that would be very interesting to see. You've got Nahom Wedi in at number 2. Again, looking at him, I think he's also gone pro now, or he's going pro after winning his last fight against Damian McKenna in 2023, which I believe is not the first time that they've fought either. If I take a quick look back, no, they've fought twice now, and he's beat him twice as well. And then Matt Slally in at number 1. He has fought over in England before on Vida FC on December, I want to say 17th in the Withenshaw Forum against Gary McKillen. But there is that fight there for him should he want it. I'm going to take the microphone off. My dog's barking. I don't want that to pick up, because I'm not re-recording this again. But there's Charlie Lynch Spence. He's moved up to 170 now, and I think he's going to stay there. He's going to look to get as many fights as he can, and if he's not having to cut as much weight at 170, he'll be able to just keep fighting. And as well, it looks as though IMAS in his plans. It was recently at the squad training day for English MMA Association. But sort of looking at guys, Dom Rogers would be a good fight. You could definitely do that. David Cook. I believe at one stage he was meant to fight Daniel Ward, but didn't due to an injury to his hand, I believe. But I spoke to Daniel Ward. He didn't seem too convinced. Obviously, then Wez Tully himself in at number 18. Below him, there's Aaron McAvely or Aaron McDonald. There's Jack Dunleavy. There is Musa Christian, but he's gone pro now. He fights on BMF. Damon Donald, you could maybe do. There's Zach Holman, 7-0. Take a look at the Shea Ingram fight just to double check the weight class on that. You never know. Could maybe see him there. Yeah, that's a featherweight fight. I don't think you get him at lightweight. Aaron Givens, I don't even think he's ever fought there. Oh, yes, he has. He's ranked there. Obviously, he's ranked at number 25, but I think if you're going to fight, you're going to fight either Jeff Acker, Benoit Prinen, or perhaps Max Lally. You never know what could happen. But that for me would be a pretty solid plan. Or go pro, but you never know what can happen in this game. They could easily bring someone over from a different country in to fight him. Golden Fight Ticket Promotions. It's something that they've done in the past before. Whether they've done it for an amateur title fight, I'm not too sure, but I presume they would, and presume they have. Obviously, Mr. Porkchop MMA. I believe he's a matchmaker there, and he has matched some great fights. But even taking a look now, you've got Stanmir Madrov that you could throw in there. You've got Christian Bogus. You know what? I don't know him, so I'm not going to suggest him. He's 6-0, but I've never seen him fight before. But no, I think those are the sort of opponents you want to be looking at now. I feel with a win over Chris Morris, he's done too much to not sort of be owed these sort of different title shot opportunities. But anyway, that is everything from me. Time to steal Dana White's intro, or outro, sorry. If you don't know, now you know. Subscribe, like, and share this video. I'm going to come to your house and absolutely knock you out. Look at this light. Look at my eyes. Look into my eyes. I've got beautiful eyes. Subscribe. Bye-bye.